Hey folks, Marco here. Let me try that again. Hey folks, Marco here. If you have clicked on this video and you're the first viewer, then congratulations. You are the first to see the face of Professor Lich. Well, other than my wife and my family, but you know. I will make a separate video where I will properly introduce myself. This video is about IP adapter, what it is and how it works, and what can you expect from it. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, this is the 6th video actually of my crash course series. I'm hoping to build a scaffolded curriculum, and there are some prerequisites or assumed knowledge. Now that doesn't mean that you have to watch all 5 of my previous videos. If you give me 60 seconds, I will show you what is expected for you to be able to follow along here. For purposes of this video, I will assume that you know how to install ComfUI and you know how to use Manager to download custom nodes that are required. You know how to load a typical checkpoint, how to encode your text prompt using clip, and how to form a basic pipe. You are also familiar with common sampling parameters with terms latent space and pixel space, and you know how to convert image between these spaces using variational autoencoder. And lastly, you are familiar with face detection technologies. You know how to pick a mask that you're interested in and how to perform detailing on it. So if that wasn't too fast and you were able to follow along, then we're good. People who know me know that I'm a little bit of a classic fantasy nerd. So what we will do is, I hope to test different IP adapter models using a single image. Let's see if we can create a fictional character based on a person on a photograph. This is a crash course, time is of the essence, so I have already cropped the image into a square, resized it to 1024 pixels and applied masks as appropriate. So that way we don't waste any time on those things, and those were already covered previously in the course. And so with all that said, let's jump in. All right, so to begin, I'm going to drag and drop workflow 1. And then I'm going to click Fit View. So what do we have here? I have my basic input group. I load Cyberrealistic and there's a simple prompt here. Then I have these 2 basic pipe nodes that don't really do anything. And then here is my sampling. So if I run this workflow, this will be my output. Now, the reason I have these 2 nodes is I want to explain in the most clear way possible, where does IP adapter fit in your whole workflow? How are you supposed to connect it? So I'm going to load IP adapter advanced. Long story short, what IP adapter does, it modifies model pipeline. This is important to note because Stable Diffusion has lots of adapters these days and they fit differently and do different things. For example, ControlNet modify positive and negative conditioning. LoRa modifies model and clip, and so on and so forth. Regardless of the adapter technology that you use, it is most commonly one of these 5 information pipelines that get altered. Unfortunately, this node doesn't specify which inputs are optional. So I will tell you, to use IP adapter, you only really need 3 things as a bare minimum. You need IP adapter model. So I'm going to use model loader and then pick IP adapter Stable Diffusion 1.5. Clip Vision is the name of the visual transformer, so we will use loader node to load vidh. So throughout the whole video, I will only use vidh. I want to keep things simple. You can try Big G if you wish, but vidh is actually the newer of the 2. Even though the second one is bigger in size, the first one is actually newer and, according to the developers, better. So we will use that one. And lastly, of course, we need our input image. So I'm going to go with load image and we will choose, let's say, cowboy shot. Now let's run this workflow and see what happens. So we have run IP adapter at full strength. And as you can see, the effect of our text prompt is showing because we do have an elf. And this time she's not wearing that green Christmas outfit. Considering it's 15th of December, maybe we should have gone with that. But anyway, and you can see that the background has now changed. So I was trying to take this character and put her in a different setting, and it has, for the most part, worked. Now let's try IP adapter plus. I'm going to swap the model. My understanding is the difference between these 2 is the number of tokens that is used to describe the image. So this image here is now described with 16 tokens, not just 4. So if I run the workflow now, the influence of the input image is much stronger. Now, IP in IP adapter stands for image prompt. And right now, your image prompt and your text prompt are fighting for attention. No pun intended. Image prompt is saying, hey, this is what the image should look like. But your text prompt says, no, this is what that image should look like. And then you end up with artifacts like this. So there are two ways to address these kinds of artifacts, and that is to either let image prompt have more sway over text prompt, or text prompt more sway over image prompt. Since CFG is the parameter that controls how strongly AI follows the prompt, reducing this value would reduce those artifacts as well. Alternatively, you can leave the CFG where it is, but you can maybe play around with weight. If you reduce the weight or change the weight function, then text prompt will have more sway over the image prompt. Now, there is a third alternative, and that is to apply a mask. Now, this is not in-painting mask, this is attention mask. So what this mask does is it tells IP adapter, don't worry about these trees in the background, just focus on the character, focus on the person. That's what we're interested in. Let's see what happens if I run it with a mask. So unfortunately, she's still in that same pose, but at least we managed to change the background a little bit. So it's not a bad start. And of course, if I change IP adapter to the previous one, just the regular IP adapter, then the output will be perhaps a bit better. Of course, as luck would have it, I ended up with more of them this time. Now, I don't want to reduce CFG because I do want to get what I am prompting for. But at the same time, I also want character fidelity. I want the character to resemble the person in the image. So I suppose method number 4 to remove these artifacts is upscaling. So I will leave IP adapter, standard IP adapter here, because I am happy with the composition and the background and all that. So what I will do is I will connect this image to the image upscaler. So I am upscaling using AI and MKD model. So I'll just connect this here. And now I want to actually swap IP adapters. Right now, this basic pipe carries standard IP adapter model, but I want to remove that one and replace it with IP adapter plus. How do I do that? The bad news is I can't do that. The good news is I don't have to. All I have to do is just go back to before I have applied the IP adapter and just reroute that, let's call it, let's say, clean basic pipe, and use that instead. So because I'm lazy, I'm just going to grab all of this, Control C, and then I'm going to paste it maybe here, Control V, add it to a group. In the options, I will pick IP adapter plus, connect basic pipe in here, and then connect this output here. Let's see what do we get. There we go, much better. To finish off for today, I'm going to talk about FaceID. However, I also want to address the elephant in the room, and that is the fancy new user interface we have. Comfy's been polished up, as you can see. So it's worth perhaps also addressing that and how it differs from what we've had before. So I will open a separate tab, and on a different port, I will launch Comfy UI, the old one. So what I can tell you is all of these features are still here. You just need to know kind of where they are located. The change will take a little bit of getting used to, but it's actually pretty good. Now let's load FaceID. IP adapter and FaceID work exactly the same. There is only one notable, well, two differences. One is FaceID comes with the accompanying LoRa, and we don't use the regular LoRa loader for that one. Instead, we use model-only version. And then from here, I'm going to use FaceID plus V2, Stable Diffusion 1.5. So that's the one I will pick. Starting point for weight is typically 0.6. You can change that as you need to. My understanding is that this parameter controls the fidelity of your character, or rather how closely face resembles the input image. Speaking of which, we do need our input image. The second difference is that FaceID also requires something called Insight Face. So you do need to make sure you have this installed through the manager. Flip Vision, we can use the same one with H, and IP adapter, I am going to choose FaceID plus V2. And that is essentially it. So again, the only difference is this node here and the fact that you need Insight Face, which is this one here. Now let's see if I can run a couple of images here. So I'm going to press Control Enter once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. And you can see the output. It's quite low resolution, but not too bad. Now, if you're new to ComfyUI, what might catch you by surprise is you might decide, hey, I like this picture, I'm going to stick with that one. So you decide to change the seed to fixed. But then if you hit Control Enter again, the image will change. And then you're like, oh, wait, what? Come back. But then what was the number? I can't remember. And then you start panicking. Well, the culprit is the fact that the widget control is set to after generation. And this can easily be changed if you go to settings, scroll down, and then change node widget control mode from after to before. Once you do, this node and any other node that has seed generation, like all the detailers, samplers, they will all say control before generate. See now, if I hit Control Enter, and then Control Enter, and then let's say I choose to go with this image, if I change it to fixed, Control Enter, see, it doesn't change. Now that's one solution. Now let me show you a better one. I'll just quickly change this back. Again, I generate a couple of images. Now let's say I want this image, but I don't know what its seed was because seed has been changed after generation. That's what this means. Change the seed after generation. Well, with new web UI, you can actually click on Q, and then all you have to do is drag this image onto the canvas. So see how the number here is 47? Now, when I drop this image, it changes back to the seed you have used just now. So old web UI did not have that feature. If you recall, we had to use custom nodes, like Python script, for example, to display the images. See now, if I change this to fixed and then run it, I get that image. And this is good because it's not just about that image. You can scroll down and pick whichever one you want. So even though I'm not saving any of these images, this feature allows me to essentially go back to where I was. Now, if you're tech savvy, you'll be quick to point out, wait a minute, Marco, these images are clearly saved somewhere. You can't just magically drag them back from, they have to be saved somewhere, right? Yeah, they are. So they are essentially in the temp folder. So if anyone's interested, you know where they actually reside. But this gets deleted when you restart ComfyUI. So unless you explicitly save it, it won't be stored. Now let's upscale the image. So I'm going to use latent upscaler. Now I'm going to hit Control Enter once, twice. And note that I didn't mute my earlier image, because the second difference that might surprise you is that you might end up with this sort of a situation. Each time you execute the workflow, the earlier image and the new one get generated, because remember, this is now fixed, but this is used as a basis to generate the other two. So when I click on number 2, I can see both of my images, but if I go back to all tasks, I only see the first one. So you might look at this at a glance and think, wait, where are my images? Nothing has changed, but it has. They're just located here. And this is a perfect moment for me to introduce you to a flat list. If I click here, now, instead of bundles or batches that we've had before, everything is laid out. So my original image, then the upscaled one, original image, upscaled one. Of course, it gets annoying having to skip every second one, so I recommend muting or deleting any output nodes in earlier parts of your workflow. So as you progress, you just keep muting once you have fixed the seed. If you're familiar with the old web UI, then you know that you can toggle these extra options, increase batch count, then click View Queue, and then Queue Prompt. This will, of course, generate 4 images. However, even though my batch count says 4, if I were to press Control Enter, it will only generate 1 image. Now, I personally got quite comfortable with this. When I want 1 image, just hit Control Enter, and if I want 4 images, I have to click Queue Prompt. I got a bit accustomed to this, but this may have been a bug, not a feature. And in the new web UI, if you set Q to be 4, now, if I press Control Enter, in fact, before I do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this. And now when I press Control Enter, it's actually going to generate 4 images, as you can see here. So old web UI, Control Enter gives you 1, regardless of this number, whereas in new web UI, you get 4. in old web UI, if I were to, I'm going to increase this number of steps just so I have time to say things. If I queue my prompts, I have clear queue, which will get rid of these three. And then I have cancel button, which will cancel my current generation. So clear queue and cancel. Now the same thing here are these two buttons. If I hit Control Enter, now I have 4 images. This will clear queue, and this just means cancel current run. In old interface, you would use up and down to increase the numbers, and they increase by 1. In the new web UI, they increase in powers of 2. So it's 1, 2, 4, 8, and so on. And that is essentially it. I mean, we can keep going, but I think you get the gist of it now. So I'm going to clear my queue again. Oh, and if you did get this, sometimes the queue hasn't been refreshed. All you have to do is just close the queue and then click again, and it'll update and you'll have your images here. So again, let's say I'm happy with this image here. Remember, this is not its seed. I have to drag that image here, and now I change seed to fixed and run again, and then that brings me back that image. So now we'll clear the queue, and now we can do maybe one more upscale. So again, we mute the old one so that the queue doesn't get flooded unnecessarily. Change this to 8 queue. We invoke the ancient magic of video editing to accelerate the flow of time, and here are our images. You can also view the images by pressing this button here. See, now you can actually use left and right arrows on the keyboard to go over the output. This week's homework is IP Adapter Playground. What is IP Adapter Playground? Well, exactly as it sounds. Remember those set and get nodes that we have used before? Well, what we're going to do is I have provided you with samplers, image to image, latent upscaling, high-res fix, and all that stuff. So what you need to do is, for example, use a get node, pick node you want, let's say IP adapter, you connect that node here, and then you preview the output. So the prompt was, and is the same in fact for all of these, is female elf sorceress casting spells, so typical nerdy shit. So you see each adapter has its own strengths and weaknesses. So FaceID was pretty good, but at the same time, it couldn't, for example, replicate her outfit. So here, what you can do is I have already configured all the IP adapters with or without masks, maybe not every single possible combination and permutation, but you know, enough for you to play around. And just to give you an idea, suppose you want, let's say, a portrait. So I'm going to put 288 here, and let's say you start with a regular IP adapter. You run your workflow, and this is your output. But then you say, wait, there's too much fluorescence in here, so you go with IP adapter mask, and now you're happy with it. Then you decide, okay, I'm going to upscale it. So you connect image to the upscaler, okay, but then you use a get node to remove this adapter. And for example, for upscaling, you use plus mask, for example. Just move this here, and let's see what, and this is what you get in that case. So this is now 360 by 640. And then you say, okay, now I want to do high-res fix, or sorry, actually upscaling using NMKD. But this one, you replace the adapter again with, for instance, FaceID. So I connect FaceID, I connect image here, and let's see the output now. There you go. So you can use a set and get node to make the most of each adapter. And of course, you can change prompt as well. She could just as easily be Kilandra, queen of all the elves, last of her royal blood, bringer of death, destroyer of worlds, and wrecker of your shit. What was I? Oh yeah, coffee, Patreon, like and subscribe if you could, if you can afford it. And otherwise, class dismissed. Now, those who know me know that I'm a little bit of a fantasy nerd, so what we will